Formbird has been working with businesses, utilities and local government for 30 years. To create Formbird Fleet, we have combined our deep knowledge in asset management and business automation. Formbird Fleet manages your fleet data, making it accurate and accessible. Our goal is to help organisations drive their business decisions based on their data. The following is a presentation by Formbird's CEO and founder, Mark Hosking. This overview is designed to give you a basic understanding of the functionality of Formbird Fleet. If you'd like to know more and would like us to address any specific needs you have, please get in touch with us via our website. The link is in the description.
Essentially what we'll run through is we'll go through the basic structure of the application, almost like a mini training session, just so you get a good feel for the kind of what it's all about. Naturally won't go to every little nook and cranny, but at least we'll give you a good feel at the sort of higher level and the principles behind it. So the key sort of what we would call three, in a technical point of view, the three major sort of entities that live within the system are the asset, and that contains all of the primary asset details. So that's the profile of the vehicle, and obviously links back to everything like the work that's been done and everything else. Yep. We then have what we term a request, and a request is, if you like, the starting point of any doing something or problem solving. And the request is really from a kind of business point of view. I need to do something. I need to fix something. I need to service something. I need to deliver some sort of service. So it starts as a request. And then we have work orders, and they're the other sort of key item. And the key item of a work order is the fact that a work order really is where we record activity. So a request might have one or more work orders, and we discretely break those work orders up into sort of functional things. So we'll have a service work order versus a repair work order versus fuel delivery work order versus, say, an accident reporting. You know, the accident reporting work order will have all the details of insurance details, authorization, approvals, all the rest of it. So each of the work orders, and we sort of do keep adding work orders that, in Formbird, we try and keep everything very specific. So things like a work order will have common data, but then they'll have specific data to the process you're trying to capture. So that, again, we're trying to minimize the amount of data and also make it more relevant to what the user is trying to do. The application is mobile native, if you like, in the sense that it's the same application that you'll see here that runs on all devices. And we have customers running them across all devices. Bundaberg are running them on tablets primarily. They do use a few phones, and in the office they use desktops. So they're using all three devices, and that's quite common for a lot of our users. A lot of our users will also just go to, which will be phone and the notebook desktop. So they've kind of got the differentiation between, like a normal, Facebook user. They'll use their desktop at work and get the big data entry, and then they'll use a phone for quick data entry. So, and that's done through what we call responsive design, but it falls under what Google calls progressive design. And the progressive design of our platform gives a whole lot of capabilities, about 17 different capabilities. One of them is that responsive design. It's what's called a web app. So we can actually do things like operate offline as an app. So you can actually cache data. Probably not so relevant for you guys because you're primarily metro and pretty good coverage and all the rest of it. But for some of our regional customers, it's more important. So against an asset, we have a summary of some sort of minor the secondary details, but against the primary details, we'll have things like the overall classification, and that'll be common across all assets. That's kind of like who's responsible for it, what department manages it, what workshop works on it, who's the section leader, who's the department head, and all the rest of it, sort of thing, in terms of responsible regard. And that doesn't matter whether the asset's a whippersnipper or a grader. It's irrelevant. You'll have allocation, so you'll allocate or potentially allocate. And of course, if you don't use something, it just means it's not used. It doesn't mean the system doesn't work. It just means obviously the flow on. So not everything I'll show you'll necessarily use, but it's kind of there to either grow into or use. The fuel details that will be specific, and that's particularly, that's important for the fuel uploader. So if when we import fuel, So the fuel upload will be used to make sure there's no conflicts. You know, the type, the fuel type, the capacity of the tanks, etc., are all used, you know, and used against the fuel detail. So that's sort of important for the fuel uploading. And we use the fuel uploading for the scheduled maintenance as well. So that'll kick off all the scheduled maintenance based on consumption. And we try and get any of the consumption details in terms of, a scheduled service will be based on date, time plus consumption. So it'll be, recurring 6 months, 3 months, whatever you put down for the various items. But it'll also be on consumption, 10,000 Ks, 20,000 Ks or what have you, or 1,000 hours or what have you. And we try and get that data from whatever. So that can come from vehicle tracking, that can come from fuel upload, can come from the daily driver check sheet. Whatever's trying to giving us that consumption detail will trigger and we'll go into the scheduling of that. Then you'll have physical details. And one thing we've done is we've compacted the physical details of the high level asset down a little bit now. And what we've done is we still, and also you'll notice that imaging is used throughout the application quite extensively. And Bundaberg's using this very successfully as well in terms of just detailing. And they're also using it for repairs. So, they had a major incident a week or two ago, and the guys were actually able to manage the incident in the office totally just through using, reporting the incident and getting images, and they didn't have to send people out on site to make the next round of decisions. So images are all used throughout the whole thing, photos. One thing we've introduced is the concept of asset components. So we have both the concept of related assets. So this might be a trailer, a prime mover is a related asset, but we also have components. And a component is really an asset inside the asset, but it's really part of the primary asset. So it can't necessarily be removed, but you want to know it's there, and you might want to look at it for a number of reasons. Number one, it may be building up a composite-rich asset, like a garbage truck or some other item. And this is a demo environment, so it's sort of gone to all extremes, including the engine. But, if you've got specific items in there, you'll want details on it. So that'll include the purchase price, the warranty period. And so if you're coming to service it, you want to know that this item is still under warranty or not under warranty, because it may be different to the bumper-to-bumper warranty. So this will be highlighted when you enter the service processes, that it'll say to the guys, hang on, this is actually under warranty. It was also came through because people wanted to be able to look at the capital cost of an item or of an asset and break it down into its subcomponents, so that they were actually comparing the Iveco-based truck with other Iveco purchases without saying, oh, look, this is a $500,000 truck. Well, it's not really. The Iveco base was still, 150,000, yet it's got all these other items on it that made it expensive. So it lets you have that opportunity to include it in the asset purchase or not include it. And then you also have the warranty period. It also gives the opportunity to actually provide a PM service against components as well. So it means that you can have a PM service schedule against a complex item that may have sub-items. You might be doing if you're doing things like garbage trucks, you want to look after the hydraulics or whatever it might be, and they'll come in at the same time, but you want to actually look that you actually done that PM service against that item. So this could be including safety checks on fire extinguishers. You might have a 6-monthly regime that says on the 6-monthly service, you're going to do a pressure test on your hydrants or whatever it might be. Then, of course, registrations, warranties. Then you've got the financials. Some of these are obviously manually entered. Others are rolled up from, your operating costs. You'll also have your high rates if you're doing internal hire and nominating higher rates. So if you have internal hire rates, you'll have the internal hire rates there. And then you'll have the hire documents, whether it be, internal hire documents. Special notes and conditions, for instance, the special notes, that'll pop up almost everywhere. Things like daily driver check sheets, your work orders, etc. So if you've got something that, it's a negative voltage vehicle or it's something or other, then you'll need to, then your special notes will come through. You can put in competencies there, training competencies. So if I try and service something or operate something and I don't have that competency, it's not going to stop you, of course, from creating a record, but it will just warn you and say, hang on, you don't have that competency. So that includes at the work order level. So if one of your mechanics is trying to move a prime mover and they don't have that training and you want to, flag that's happening, you can create that there. Also against the asset, we have operating hours. And the operating hours are very much about when does a business expect the asset to be available. So this is looking at downtime. So trying to calculate the downtime as accurate as possible so that if you come in on Saturday to bust your guts to fix this vehicle, it's actually not downtime because you're actually doing outside of operating hours. So of course you could set that to be 24/7 and then it's just that simple calculation of 24/7. But this is actually saying that I really only expect, some of our customers like Bundaberg, for instance, again, they keep downtime on Fridays for their garbage trucks. So if they operate and fix the garbage trucks on Friday, it's actually not downtime because it's a scheduled maintenance day. So you can nominate downtime and operating hours. This is kind of like your Instagram of Formbird. So it's showing where that image was taken, and if there was multiple images on the same thing, it'll have the multiple images and it'll have the description of it. So the mechanics, just not all the details. You can drill down to that work order. So work order 1337, which was a diagnosis work order, that was the image and that was the description. So it goes in chronological order and it gives you a bit of a running history of the asset. So, customers are starting to mandate how many photos they want taken for every work order or whatever. And particularly as the vehicle leaves and that happens at the request level and the work order level. So that's a repair request. So you can basically have, this is what was reported and this is what was done to fix it. Okay. At the work order level is like the mechanic fixing it. At the repair, at the request level, that's the customer, the driver or whoever else saying, I've got a problem. This is my problem. So you've got kind of both happening there. Our risk replacement program. So the risk replacement program, half the values come from the system in terms of consumption-based values. And then it's got subjective values, which really is looking at putting a weighting against each of those values to come up with a standardized methodology to look at a replacement program from a risk point of view, not from just a pure financial point of view. So it's kind of like the criticality of the asset to the business. Is it loved? How often does it get washed? Just simple things like that. Has it got significant rust or not? So balancing up between the value or the risk of that asset to the business versus the love and care that's been given to it and the condition it's in to come up with a replacement value. And then that can be snapshot on a regular basis. And then as that changes, looking at what it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, whenever you're running it, to determine, what's happening to that asset. You might find that you can, hire that from Joe's Hire down the road. So the risk will change totally because you can get it at short notice. Or you might lose Joe's Hire and suddenly this becomes a critical asset and all of a sudden you should be looking at replacing it or loving it a bit more, one or the other. So that's looking at a risk replacement approach to asset replacement programs. We have parts in inventory. You can run it as a kind of a complete inventory, or you can just purely use it on consumption. You can have a look at parts from a point of view of an individual part can be associated specifically with an asset. And therefore, like if you've got a spare transmission or something like that, it can be nominated, or it can be pure consumable. You can warehouse it. You can nominate a location. So you can put it onto a mobile vehicle or whatever else. You can have minimum stock orders. You can basically manage it like any parts system and inventory system. Actually, more to the point. I look at the request level. So I've looked at the asset, and the asset, of course, can go into the request and the repairs because everything links to everything else. But now attacking it, I suppose, from a request level, which is really starting from the point of view as I want to do something. Now, I'm logged in as a supervisor, so I often have I'll have two kind of views of things. So a lot of these things will have two views. So for instance, a repair request or an operator request versus a service request, for instance. A repair request is coming from an operator. So someone's nominating an operator repair request. They can't, for instance, assign it to someone. They can't nominate the repair dates. They can't do anything. They can just report it, but they'll have visibility. So that basically gives them a view of a reporter of an issue. If I go as a supervisor, I'll go in and report a problem, and I'll report it specifically, and I'll also be able to, so someone's just walked into the workshop, for instance, and said, look, I've got a busted something or rather. So if I do that, I'll link it to the asset. I'll update any details, I can start scheduling it in. So I'll get working on it on Monday. I'll hope to finish it on Wednesday. It'll default throughs from the asset from the workshop that it's located in. It'll start to show any work orders that are repairs that are open, etc. I can take a photo of any damage, etc. So that's the request level. So it's quite simple. It's really just something's broken, please fix it. From there, I'll start to then create, there's a repair history. I had to actually save it so it's new. I'll start creating work orders. For this repair request, these are valid work orders. So not all work orders are valid against all requests. And as I was saying, I'll break them down. So if it's an accident, I might start collecting the accident details and start working on the insurance and the approvals and all the rest of it. I might have diagnosis, which is not necessarily, I've actually found the problem and fixing it, or I might go ahead and repair it. So once I hit a repair, I can assign it or leave it unassigned. If it's unassigned, it just stays with the workshop, and I'll create that repair. So this is kind of now at the mechanics level, and people operate slightly differently. They let the mechanic create them because they know what's going on, or you might have a workshop supervisor. It just depends on your workflow a little bit on who's creating. And sometimes it's a combination. I might assign a work order to a mechanic, and then they create others because they've had to go and do extra work. And you might also end up with multiple repairs. You don't have to have just one repair against an individual request. So the idea there is that if it's significant enough work, I might, and even against a service, I might create a repair. It might have come in for a service. I'm doing my regular service. I do my checks and everything else. And then I find a problem. I'll actually create a repair, which will be then an unscheduled bit of work, and it'll be repairing the transmission or whatever else. Here, I haven't at this point in time classified it. So I'll classify it, and that'll start to drive things like what I can select in terms of the repair outcomes. I've selected that. It's told me that neither the engine nor the vehicle is under warranty. So there's no warranty available. They would turn green if they were under warranty. I've got the description from the repair work order. It's an unscheduled. It's come in broken, so it's unscheduled. So that goes to my stats of scheduled versus unscheduled. I can assign it at any point in time. So I can go and assign it to a particular mechanic, and it'll appear in their desktop and so if I assign it to myself, I'll assign it to that mechanic and it'll appear. You have the ability to keep timesheets, and they can be used not necessarily, some customers are using it for their actual internal timesheetings. Others is just a relative costing. So you can put a base rates against the users, so against the mechanics, and then record base costs, and that'll go to the cumulative costs or expenses of maintaining that asset. If I have multiple people come to that work order, multiple people turn on, they create individual work orders. So if John and Bob are working on it, or Leanne and Bill, they'll both create a time recorder and be recorded against that work order, which then goes and rolls up against that vehicle. Once I've done the work and I work my way through, so I can now start working my way through. I'll go things like in progress. I can put on hold. If I put on hold, I'll give a reason why it's on hold, and I'll keep a history of why it was on hold. Okay, so I might have it on hold. When was it? And I'll keep a complete history. Oh, reason for on hold. Reason on hold. It's telling me there. Waiting bay. I don't know. Doesn't matter. And so that'll keep telling me what's going on. So once I've put in progress, I take it off on hold, and then I'll continue working on. Once I come to completing it, it's going to give me a breakdown list of diagnosis that's only going to be based on the engine because it's only an engine fault. So to fix it, I just simply added fluid. I had improper fluid levels, and what was the cause? Unfair wear and tear. The users weren't filling up the oil. We also have the concept of questionnaires, and you can create your own questionnaires. So if you've got specific questionnaires that go against particular items, you can have them as additional sort of data collection. So you might have, if you regularly do oil sampling, for instance, you might want to take specific oil sampling results. The general monitoring one is an interesting one. It's a good one. So if you're using particularly the daily driver check sheet, if you create a general monitoring one, so this is where you use it for, I found an oil leak, but I'm not going to fix it now because I don't have enough detail. I've got to get the asset out anyway. We'll just monitor it. So really, this is kind of like a work order that's not a work order. This is sort of like, I need it monitored. So that will then appear on basically the day drive check sheets if you select that asset. It also appear on the workshop supervisors' dashboards and things like that. So they kind of know, look, vehicle XYZ has got this slow leak. Yeah, I'm not going to worry about it for the moment, but I'll keep an eye on it. So it's quite a, and then you can create your own as well. So if you've got specific questionnaires. You can also then show materials. So if I'm actually now consuming materials, I'll now decide on any materials. I can search for the materials. I can then basically, select a filter. So I've used that I can look at that oil filter. So against a material item, I've got the different types of items, whether it's pure consumable, whether it's a service item that's being used in a service, suppliers, minimum orders, reorder levels. Is it active? Any images? You might have some MDSs or other, details on the asset, etc. on the item. So really, you can then record, complete history of that, against that repair in terms of materials, what was done, what was the result, photos of it, etc. We can now enter the scheduled world, which is your planned maintenance and your service schedules. They will be generally created automatically. That's what you kind of hope, but you also have circumstances where you just are going to create them manually. It's come out of time. You're just going to go and do that one or what have you. So normally it'll be running. So we run a process every night against, the environment. It's looking at has a meterage been met, has a time been met, whatever. Here's all the service requests that need to be created. But alternatively, someone comes in and they go, right, I need to create a service. I'll do the 62,000 case service. You might have special decisions or whatever else, please check all oils, oils carefully. I don't know. You might take some extra photos. So, because I'm in there, I've got to say when I'm going to start it. Again, I'll start it Monday. It's going to be a busy day. Hope to get it done by Tuesday. I can again sign it. So very similar construct. It'll default to the workshop. But the difference now is I head into a service request. So again, I get the repair history. So what's been going on with it? It's obviously a pretty crappy vehicle. It keeps breaking down. What I do now is I do a PM work order. So it's slightly different to it. And as I said, you can do under a service request, you might have other different work orders. It may turn out that you actually end up, doing a regular service, but you find an issue, you actually go off and do an accident report, or you do a repair. If you're doing a repair, I'll do the service first, but you can add repair work orders. So the difference really between a repair and a service, it'll pull through the service requirements. So that might include images or manuals or anything else if you're attaching it to, the actual service. But one of the big differences then, it'll also bring through any parts that have been nominated for that service, and also a checklist. So the mechanic then works their way through the checklist that's been nominated against that work order. Again, you've got the questionnaires, same sort of construct. You've got the questionnaires there if you want to add extra data or collect extra data. You have the same process of processing the actual. So I might, I better save it first. We've got to type. So normally this would be created as part of the process. So this is me coming in and creating one out of order. As I said, I can create the timesheet. I can put it in progress. I'll start the timer. I need to assign it to someone before I can start the timer, which is sensible. And there's a bunch of other requests, and the requests also are, what I haven't shown you is a few things like the repair request. If I come in and do a repair request, I can also do things like nominate that, if I'm actually in the field and I've got access to the system. So let's say I'm a driver and I want to report an issue. I can also do things like nominate the fact that I've broken down in the field, and then I can put a street address in there and nominate that, I need a tow truck or whatever else. So you can actually start to sort of use it for the workflow of activity, and that'll then appear in you can also set up notifications and emails. So on a new request, make it notify or text message a group of people or an individual or what have you based on the particular request. Okay, going back. So yeah, there's a lot of workflow around notifications and SMSs and emails and stuff. So that includes, the fact that it's, come in and come out. Now, just diving down, just quickly, I'll just have a look at the service profiling. So this is where we start to create and manage the service schedule, so the planned maintenance. There's a couple of ways we can create service schedules. So we can do it through this approach. We've also got a logbook creator, so you can sort of follow a logbook. And we've also just implementing at the moment, almost like a traditional garage type creation, where you say, I'm going to create the next service at the point of service. So you complete the service and you create the next service. So you can do it sort of three ways. There's this generator, which is generating a complete sort of cyclic maintenance schedule. There's a logbook, which you look at almost non-repeating events. So you're really creating one by one, but you're creating a complete schedule. And then the third way is the vehicle comes in for its 10,000. I'm going to go, okay, mechanic says 20,000 Ks. And it's sort of the very primitive type, simple way. But all three are valid for various reasons, and you can use all three. One doesn't exclude the other. They all basically create the same, what we call, a service event type record. They're all identical. They just sit there waiting to be triggered and to fire off and come to life. But this is our generator here. And essentially what you can do is any asset. So I've nominated an asset. I've given it a description of what this planned service is. I can do it against up to 4 parameters, if you like, and you can have any combination of them. So against a date, a primary meter, a secondary meter, and fuel. So typically primary meter is going to be odometer, but it could be hours, and it could be all 4. You might have a very heavy vehicle where you've got, cyclic 3 months, you've got primary meter, which is odo, and your secondary meter is hours and fuel. So some of the very big plant we're seeing operate on all 4. The ones that you select is then ones that you put parameters on in terms of how far out you want to be planning it. I'm going to be planning it for these dates and this consumption. And you can have a start date and end date, so that if you're obviously bringing in plant that's existing, you're going to have a start base period and an end date period. You'll also have lead time. So 14 days is fairly low. A lot of our customers are like up to a month, saying that I'm expecting this to occur in a month. What it then does is then you basically build up your services, and you can also have a service which inherits other services. So for instance, a C service So this is the individual services. So basically I'm saying, I want to plan this vehicle from this date to this date, from these mileage to this mileage, and these are the different services, and here are the service details. So for an individual service, I will have what's driving it, the type of service, whether it's inheriting from other services, the checklists that I'll perform, materials I need, and specific questionnaires. And I can build up, basically, this is kind of like the service event. This is what I'm expecting to happen on that day to do that service. So what I'm essentially doing is I'm building up the profile of this vehicle and its planned maintenance out for whatever period. So each of these are cyclic. So once I then say, and I'll hide this one column here. Once I say kind of build, what it'll do is build up the program. And so it'll build the date, time. It'll build the odometer. It'll sort them in the order that you've decided to sort on, typically date, but it could be odometer. They normally will obviously align. And what will happen is that you'll see that it'll go through the sequence. So it's going A service, B service, A service, C service, A service, B service, D service. So that's running through that sort of the cycle you'll typically see in a lot of assets. Once that's built up and you've committed it, it'll then actually build up the scheduling records and the scheduling docs. So these are the service documents, and these are the documents that kind of sit there waiting to be called on and to turn into a work order. So if you want to reprogram it, you can reprogram it, and essentially it doesn't cancel. Obviously, it doesn't cancel out ones that have been activated, but anything that's kind of in the future, what have you. So you can reprogram it. So you might say, oh, look, I really need to, I want to bring it forward, the services, I want to extend it out or whatever, just if you're readjusting it, you can readjust it and it'll readjust it. So this is generating it from a logbooks perspective, which is slightly different. As I said, it's really, some of the logbooks, you don't really have that cyclic. Some of the approaches and the manufacturers have done it that do. It's kind of, so we're trying to cover all bases in terms of ease of creating a planned maintenance program, and it's continually growing in terms of how we improve it and make it nicer, and